Look at this stupid little fish. Got buffed this season. Now it's destroying everything. So dumb. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very strong Great League Remix team to share with you guys. I know it's very unoriginal. Obviously it's gonna be some really top meta Pokemon, and this Great League Remix doesn't feel like a remix, honestly, because these are some Pokemon we see all the time. But I tried to run something a little more original before. As you can see in the background, I was running Shadow Zapdos and Shadow Steelix, but it wasn't working out for me. The game was just working against me. I ran the Shadow Steelix and I got a Poliwrath and a Swampert, and it was basically useless. So I ended up running this really meta team, and it worked out really well for me. And I'm gonna keep running this team. I might actually go back to Ultra League because I really enjoy Ultra League, but if I were to play Remix, I will keep running this team for sure. So the team is going to be Mantine on the lead, and Mantine is going to take care of your grass types. And then in the back, you're going to have two Mud Boys. Mud Boys because you need something for electric types, which Mantine is really weak to. So you're going to have Shadow Swampert and Whiscash in the back. Very top meta Pokemon, and you're seeing them everywhere. Mantine can also take care of Poliwrath, which the backline is quite weak to. I like to draw out the Poliwrath sometimes with Whiscash, but sometimes I'll use Swampert to draw out grass types, and if I'm lucky, I'll be able to land the Sledge Wave, and sometimes I'll take the grass type out, then I'll be able to win switch, and it works out for me. Obviously, the biggest core breaker to this team is going to be Hisui and Electrode, but let's be honest, who's running that? Anyways, let's get into these battles. Up first, we are going to be hard countered on the lead with a Carbink. I'm immediately going to swap in Swampert, expecting my opponent to have a grass type. They bring in a Serperior and they no-shield the Sledge Wave. This is so good for me. It almost takes the Serperior out. They live with 1 HP, so I go ahead and I shield knowing that I can take switch. And then my opponent brings in a Jellicent. I'm going to be able to land 2 Hydro Cannons on this Jellicent, and look at how much damage they do. The Jellicent is now in the red, and now I can comfortably bring Mantine against this Jellicent and just go for that aerial ace, but my opponent swaps out into a Carbink, and I have another Carbink answer in the back. Gonna bring in my Whiscash and just go for these Scalds. I was really hoping for an attack debuff on the first Scald. I didn't get it, so I went ahead and I shielded the first Moonblast. Gonna go for another Scald, and this time I get the debuff. Gonna go for another Scald before they can reach another Moonblast, and I get another debuff, so my opponent swaps out to clear the debuff. I see this, I go for the Mud Bomb to take the Jellicent out, and this Moonblast here is not going to be enough to take my Whiscash out. I'm gonna be able to reach another Mud Bomb, take the Carbink out, and take that win. GG's to our opponent. I got really lucky there. If they had shielded the Sledge Wave, it would have been game over for me. Moving on to the next match, we are going to see a Lickitung on the lead. Okay, now Lickitung is a little bit tricky to deal with, but it is going to be a team effort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weaken it a little bit with an aerial ace, take the first 2 body slams on Mantine, and then I am going to swap out into Swampert. Swampert's Hydro Cannon will do enough damage to take this Lickitung out. However, my opponent is going to swap into a Poliwrath as soon as I see the Swampert. So I am going to bait with a Hydro Cannon, and then I'm going to shield here just so that I could go for the Sledge Wave on the next move, expecting my opponent to either let this go or shield. They use their second shield, and this is going to be good for me. But here's my problem now. My Mantine has a lot of energy. This Poliwrath has enough for an Icy Wind, so I expected them to go immediately for that Icy Wind. So what I do is I swap in Whiscash, take the Icy Wind, and then I bring in Mantine and go immediately for that aerial ace to take out most of the Poliwrath's health. And then my opponent swaps in a Shadow Gligar, probably not expecting me to be able to reach the Ice Beam, but I do, and I one-shot it, and we're able to take that out, get rid of that, and then I can take this Poliwrath out with a Mud Bomb, but I still have a Lickitung to deal with. All I have to do is go for 2 Skulls here. Hopefully I can get an attack drop, but I don't. I still have a shield left for the Power Whip, or I'm in Body Slam range, but I'm able to reach the second Scald before my opponent has back-to-back, and we take the Lickitung out. GG's to our opponent. On to the next match, we are going to see a Shadow Dragonair on the lead. This is actually where we want to see the Dragon type because Mantine is going to be able to hit for neutral with Aerial Ace, and it's going to be able to hit for super effective with the Ice Beam. I'm going to build up to the Ice Beam, but then I'm going to bait with an Aerial Ace, and my opponent shields. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invest my own shield because I know that I can take my opponent's second shield, or I will take lead. My opponent ends up giving up their second shield, and then I bring in Whiscash immediately. They stay in, and they let me reach a Mud Bomb, so I'm able to take their Dragonair out. That's good for us. Then my opponent brings in a Lickitung. I'm going to go for a Scald, and then I'm going to let the Power Whip go. I decided that I'm going to hope that Swampert can sweep whatever is in the back, and my opponent has a Charjabug in the back. They go ahead and they top left, although they had a chance there to win that. They could have gone for X-Scissor, which would hurt my Swampert, and then I think they could have reached a Body Slam on their Lickitung. But GG's to my opponent. Moving on to the next match, we are going to see an amazing lead of Poliwrath against our Mantine. They are immediately going to swap in Charjabug, and I am going to go immediately into Swampert, but I think this was a mistake because my opponent can actually reach a second X-Scissor and take us out, so I am going to have to invest a shield, and one Hydro Cannon is not going to be enough to take this Charjabug out. They invest their second shield. I'm going to be able to reach another Hydro Cannon, but they're going to survive with very little HP, so I have to invest my second shield as well, unfortunately. Fully expecting them to bring back the Poliwrath here, and then I'm going to go for the Aerial Ace before they swap out or before they throw an Icy Wind. Now I'm going to be able to take these Icy Winds. They're not going to hurt as much. Again, they are neutral because of Mantine's water typing. Now here my opponent makes a very impressive catch onto Shadow Gliscor in the back, but I'm going to be able to bring Whiscash in, take a Night Slash, and then go for a Scald, which should KO this Gliscor, and the Poliwrath is not going to be able to take us out. I'm going to be able to reach a Mud Bomb and take this Poliwrath out, and I can even live that Scald very easily. Again, Whiscash is super tanky, and we take that win. GG's to our opponent. And that first set is going to be a 4-1. Maybe if I wasn't messing around with Steelix and Shadow Zapdos in the first game, I might have gotten a 5-0, but a 4-1 is still very good. We'll take it. We're getting really close to Expert as well. Also, I would have gone really positive today if I didn't start facing some really bad lag. Like, there were some situations where the game just wouldn't let me throw my charged move when I wanted to throw it, and it made me overtap, so it was kind of frustrating. But that's okay, let's move on. Next game, we are going to see a Whiscash lead, but my opponent safe swaps into a Dugong, and Dugong is kind of a core breaker for this team. I'm going to have to stay in with Mantine and get it weak before I swap out. So I'm going to go for 2 Aerial Aces against this Dugong. Unfortunately, the second one is debuffed. I'm going to take the second Icy Wind knowing that I can live it, and then I'm going to swap into Whiscash. Unfortunately, one Mud Bomb is not going to be able to take the Dugong out from this range, so I'm going to have to take another Icy Wind on this Whiscash and get debuffed. But that's alright because we're able to farm the Dugong out and have some energy for the Whiscash, so I'm immediately going to go for a Scald on the Whiscash, and we get an attack drop. So now we're kind of even. We're both doing debuff damage, but my opponent goes for a Scald, and of course they get the attack debuff. Gonna go for another Scald, and I get another attack debuff. That's pretty good for me, and then my opponent swaps into a Skarmory. I still have 2 shields, and my opponent still has 2 shields as well. They no-shield the first Hydro Cannon, and it puts them in the yellow, but unfortunately our fast moves are not going to be doing any damage to the Skarmory, so I'm gonna have to land another Hydro Cannon. Now, unfortunately, my opponent is going to be able to take my final shield here with the Sky Attack, and I am going to be able to reach the Hydro Cannon and land it on the Skarmory and take it out. They let it go and they save their final shield for Whiscash. Gonna go for a Hydro Cannon and take their final shield here, and then they are going to take my Swampert out, but I should be able to reach a move on my Whiscash and take their Whiscash out. GG's to our opponent, we take that win. Now you guys, this next match is so good. I am so proud of how I played it. On the lead, we are going to see a Dragonair. As I did before, I'm going to build up to the Ice Beam, and then I'm going to bait with an Aerial Ace. Gonna let the first Body Slam go, and then I'm going to shield the next Body Slam so that I could get the Ice Beam off. And it is worth investing a shield here because if I can get my opponent's second shield out of the way, Swampert can actually beat a lot of things with shields down, and I'll save one shield for Swampert. Now, I didn't want the Dragonair to farm down my Mantine because they would have so much energy for what I have in the back, so I immediately bring in Whiscash. Whiscash can hit for neutral with the Mud Bombs. My opponent decided to stay in, go for a Body Slam, but then they swapped out into a Vigoroth while I had so much energy on my Whiscash, so I was able to go for a Scald and then a Mud Bomb. I threw the Mud Bomb because I was afraid my opponent would throw a Body Slam and take me out. So I went for that Mud Bomb, and then I bring in Mantine because I know that my opponent can reach a Body Slam and I don't want to use my final shield yet on my Swampert. Now this is where I make a really nice play. I expected my opponent to try to catch the Sludge Wave on their Dragonair, but I waited, I was very patient, and I went for a Hydro Cannon on the Dragonair, and I farmed up a little bit extra so that I would be able to reach the Sludge Wave on the Poliwrath. It survived with a little bit of HP, but I was able to farm it down with Mud Shot. GG's to our opponent. Now on to this next match, we are going to see something that is really bad for my team. On the lead, we're going to see Whiscash against our Mantine, which is a very good lead, but my opponent swaps into Skeledirge and I immediately swap into Whiscash. Gonna go for a Mud Bomb, but my opponent is going to shield here. I was also a little bit slow on the swap, unfortunately, so they are going to be able to reach a Disarming Voice and take us out before I can reach a second Mud Bomb. I should have been a lot faster on the swap. Now I'm going to bring in Swampert. I did let my Whiscash go, and my opponent brings back in their Whiscash. I was okay with letting my Whiscash go because I knew that Swampert can also handle their Whiscash. Gonna go for these Hydro Cannons, and they are going to hurt the Whiscash. I'm going to be able to get the second one off as well before my opponent can reach another Mud Bomb. So I go ahead and I invest my second shield, fully thinking that my opponent would have something in the back that would be weak to water, but they have a Ferrothorn, and here I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so dead, I'm so dead, I'm so dead. This thing has thunder. It's gonna take me out. My poor Mantine is gonna die here. We'll see what happens. I go for 2 Aerial Aces, and I'm just hoping here that my Swampert would be able to reach a Hydro Cannon and take it out, but it looks like my opponent is not running Thunder. Thunder would be so good in this meta, so I was almost certain that my opponent would be running it, but they're not. 2 Power Whips is not enough to take Mantine out. I'm able to take it out with Aerial Aces alone and wing attack damage, and we take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next match, we are going to see a Jellicent on the lead. Jellicent is another situation where it is going to be a team effort to take it out. I like to weaken it with an Aerial Ace, and then I'll swap into my Whiscash. I'll take the first Shadow Ball on Mantine first, and then I'll swap into Whiscash so that I can hit with neutral with the Mud Bombs. But my opponent brings this little monster in, and this thing is kind of bad for my whole team. If it has energy, it'll be bad for Mantine. But they go ahead and they throw the energy ball without farming up too much. So that's good. I can bring Mantine in now and go for these Aerial Aces. Now here I thought maybe they would go for a Weather Ball. They were also debuffed by the Scald that I threw, but they went for an Energy Ball. Unfortunately, I no-shielded that and I wasn't able to get the Aerial Ace off. So now, unfortunately, I have to take it out with Swampert, but Swampert is not going to be able to handle this Jellicent by itself. It is going to have to take 2 moves from the Jellicent, so unfortunately we are going to lose this. I'm not even going to be able to see what my opponent has in the back. I go ahead and I throw this Hydro Cannon. I just want to see what they have in the back, but they don't let me. They go ahead and they shield, and the Jellicent is able to take our Swampert out. GG's to our opponent. Now on to this next match. This one was so close. My opponent leads Shadow Dragonair into our Mantine. I am going to go for these Aerial Aces immediately. I'm not even going to build up to the Ice Beam because Aerial Ace is going to be doing enough damage to get this Dragonite weak. And they no-shield the first Aerial Ace, which is really good for me because my backline does not like this at all. I'm going to go ahead and catch the Dragon Claw on my Whiscash. I save my Mantine in case my opponent has a Poliwrath in the back. And we're able to actually draw it out with the Whiscash here, which is really good. Now I can go for the Mud Bombs. This Ice Punch. Oh, wow, Ice Punch. I was expecting an Icy Wind. Anyways, it doesn't take us out, so I'm able to get the second Mud Bomb off and get this Poliwrath very weak. Now I'm going to bring Mantine in and take whatever energy this Poliwrath has, and then I can farm it down with Swampert and have a ton of energy for whatever my opponent has in the back. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to take an Ice Punch here. I no-shield it just in case I need to save a shield for my Swampert for whatever's in the back. I still don't know what it is. It is going to be a Kanto Ninetales. I'm going to just have to land one Hydro Cannon to take it out, but unfortunately, their Dragonite was alive with 1 HP and 1 Mud Shot was not enough to take it out, so we take that loss. It was so close. I needed that Dragonite out of the way, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to take it out. They saved it with 1 HP, which was so annoying, but we still get a positive set, and we're getting really close to Expert. Now after this, unfortunately, I started facing so many problems with the games. Unfortunately, this next set should have been a positive set for me as well, but I'm going to show you guys what happened in, not this game, I think it was the next game I ran into an issue. But in this next game, we are going to see a Shadow Dragonair on the lead. Again, you guys know how I play this. I will no-shield the first Body Slam, build up to that Ice Beam, and then bait with an Aerial Ace. My opponent goes ahead and shields the first move, and then we CMP tie on the next move. It looked like it was a CMP tie. For some reason, I throw the Aerial Ace here instead of the Ice Beam, but that's fine. I'm fully expecting them to shield anyways, so we get their second shield out of the way. Gonna bring Whiscash in, but this time they catch the Mud Bomb on a Hypno. This is fine, but not ideal. I could have gone for a Scald and potentially dropped their attack, but I am going to go for a Scald on the next move. We do get that attack drop, and they are running Psyshock. I'm going to be able to reach another Mud Bomb. I think this should be enough to take the Hypno out. It is. And then they bring back in the Dragonair, but I don't want them to farm my Whiscash down. I have a Swampert in the back. I'm going to go ahead and shield the Body Slam and throw the Hydro Cannon immediately to get rid of this Dragonair. And my opponent has a Skarmory in the back. Gonna go for a Hydro Cannon, and unfortunately I'm not gonna be able to reach a second Hydro Cannon. I'm gonna have to hope that one of my back Pokemon can reach a move to take the Skarmory out. So I'm gonna bring Whiscash in. It has a little bit of energy. I reach the Scald. Is it gonna be enough to take the Skarmory out? It's not. They survive with 1 HP, but I bring Mantine in and I wing attack it down. GG's to our opponent. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys the types of issues I started running into. My opponent leads Charjabug into our Mantine. I immediately swap into Swampert, and my opponent brings in Skarmory. This is actually very good for me. I'm going to be able to hit the Skarmory with Hydro Cannons, and I'm going to go ahead and shield so that I could win the switch because I do not want the Charjabug aligned to my Mantine. I'm going to go for another Hydro Cannon. One more is going to be enough to take the Skarmory out, but we managed to take both of their shields. That's fine. I'm going to be able to reach another one, but my opponent swaps out into Poliwrath. This is really good for me. Now I have the Mantine aligned to Poliwrath, so it's looking pretty good so far. I'm going to go for an Aerial Ace to get it really low, and now I'm going to farm it down completely. I'm not going to go for another Aerial Ace. I'm going to farm this Poliwrath down completely, also because I don't want the Charjabug to get too much farm. They bring Charjabug back in. I go for an Ice Beam. Unfortunately, I can't get another move off because a Volt Switch is enough to take Mantine out. And then I bring Swampert. I take the Exocet on Swampert. It takes me out. That's fine. I still have a full health Whiscash to deal with this Charjabug, and they also have a Skarmory in the back, and this is where it makes me overtap. I threw the Scald in the middle of their Volt Switch, but for some reason, it made me do one more Mud Shot, and that allowed my opponent to catch. I'm actually going to slow it down for you guys so that you can see what happened. So here I'm going to do 3 more Mud Shots before I throw the Scald. I tap it. It does one more Mud Shot instead of throwing the Scald immediately. Unfortunately, they are going to be able to catch on Skarmory, and that is going to lose me the game. And this starts happening in a few later matches as well. I don't know if it was lag that was making me do one extra fast move, but you know, it is what it is. This game has its ups and its downs. Unfortunately, we take that loss. But up next, we are going to be up against fellow YouTuber Jonkus, and he is going to be leading Jellicent. Like I said, Jellicent is a little bit tough for this team. It is going to be a team effort to take it out. I'm gonna go for these Aerial Aces to weaken it, but my opponent swaps into Lycanroc Dusk form. Okay, I'm gonna bring Whiscash in because Whiscash is a tankier one. Now, I didn't know really what this thing had, But I remember that Lycanroc got Trailblaze, so I was worried this would have Trailblaze as well. I wasn't sure if the different forms would have the same movesets. So I went ahead and I shielded, and I got lucky with the shield because that would have taken me out. And if they are running an ABB line and they have another rock type in the back, if they took my Whiscash out in one switch, then the other rock type would be aligned to my Mantine, and that would not be good for me. So I go ahead and I double shield Whiscash. We're able to take the Lycanroc out, and my opponent has a Carbink in the back. Now I can swap in Swampert, and I just need to go for 2 Hydro Cannons to take the Carbink out. Thankfully, my opponent doesn't have any shields left because they double shielded Lycanroc. They bring Jellicent back in, and because it's so low, 1 Hydro Cannon would be enough to take it out, and my Mantine is still full health, so they top left. GG's to our opponent. On to the final match of the video. I wanted to show you guys this match because I should not have won this at all. My opponent makes a tiny mistake that lets me win the game. You guys will see soon. I am up against a Shadow Dragonite lead. Unfortunately, I am going to double shield my Mantine because I want to take this Dragonite out. So they shield the first Aerial Ace and then they shield the second Aerial Ace. I am going to be able to make it to a third one so that I can take this Dragonite out. At least it'll be out of the way. But my opponent is going to have a Jellicent in the back, and as I said, Jellicent is very difficult for this team. And if they have a Poliwrath in the back, it's going to be even more difficult for me. I'm immediately going to swap Whiscash in, and unfortunately they do have the Poliwrath in the back. So I'm just going to go for these Mud Bombs, try to get it as weak as I can with this Whiscash before my opponent takes me out. Now here, they could have farmed me down completely and had so much energy, but they go for the Icy Wind, and that was so lucky for me because now I can just bring Mantine in, force them to throw their second Icy Wind, and then I attempted to farm down with Swampert, but they realized that I would be able to farm them down, so they swapped out into Jellicent. I just have to go for 2 Hydro Cannons to take this Jellicent out. I reach the second one before they can reach a Shadow Ball. They do throw the Surf, but then I'm able to Mudshot the Poliwrath down, and we take that win. I should not have won that. But that brings us to the end of our video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like my videos, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like. It helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!